Book of Heaven, Volume 12, Part 15. January 1st, 1920. In each act that the soul does in the divine will, Jesus remains multiplied, as in the sacramental hosts. Continuing in my usual state, my always lovable Jesus seemed to come out from within my interior, and in looking at him, I saw him all wet with tears. Even his garments, his most holy hands, were pearled with tears. What torment! I remained shaken, and Jesus told me, "My daughter, what ruin shall the world fall into? The scourges shall flow as more painful than before, so much so that I do nothing but cry over its sad lot." Then he added, "My daughter, my will is wheel, and the one who enters into it remains encircled inside, to the point of not being able to find an opening to go out. And everything she does remains fixed on the eternal point and pours into the wheel of eternity." But do you know what the garments are of the soul who lives in my will? They are not of gold, but of most pure light. And this garment of light shall serve her as mirror to make all of heaven see how many acts she has done in my will. In fact, in each act she has done in my will, she enclosed the whole of me. And this garment shall be adorned with many mirrors, and in each mirror the whole of me shall appear. So from whatever side she shall be looked at, from behind, from the front, to the right, to the left, they shall see me, and multiplied for as many acts as she has done in my volition. A more beautiful garment I could not give her. It shall be the distinction of only the souls who live in my will." I remained a little confused in hearing this, and he added, "How is it? You doubt? Does the same not happen in the sacramental hosts? If there are 1,000 hosts, there are 1,000 Jesuses, and I communicate myself entirely to 1,000. And if there are 100 hosts, there are 100 Jesuses, and I can give myself only to 100. In the same way, in each act done in my will, the soul encloses me inside, and I remain sealed inside the will of the soul. So these acts done in my volition are eternal communions, the species not subject to being consumed as in the sacramental hosts. And as the species are consumed, my sacramental life ends, while in the hosts of my will there is neither flour nor any other matter. The food, the substance of these hosts of my will, is my eternal will itself, united with the will of the soul, eternal with me, these two wills not subject to being consumed. Therefore, what is the wonder if the whole of my person shall be seen multiplied for as many acts as she has done in my will? More so, since I have remained sealed in her, and she as many times in me. So the soul too shall remain multiplied in me for as many acts as she has done in my will. These are the prodigies of my will, and this is enough for you to remove any doubt. January 9th, 1920. Each created thing holds out the love of God to man. I was praying, and with my thought I was fusing myself in the eternal volition, and bringing myself before the Supreme Majesty, I was saying, Eternal Majesty, I come to your feet in the name of the whole human family, from the first to the last man of the future generations, to adore you profoundly. At your most holy feet, I want to seal the adorations of all. I come to recognize you in the name of all as Creator and absolute ruler of everything. I come to love you for all and for each one. I come to requite you in love for all, for each created thing, inside of which you placed so much love that the creatures shall never find enough love to repay you in love. But in your will I find this love, and wanting that my love, as the other acts, be complete, full, and for all, I have come into your will, where everything is immense and eternal, and where I find love, to be able to love you for all. So, I love you for each star you have created. I love you for as many drops of light and intensity of heat as you have placed in the sun. But who can say all that my poor mind was saying? I would be too long, therefore I stop here. Now, while I was doing this, a thought told me, how is it, and in what way did our Lord place rivers of love toward the creature in each created thing? And a light answered my thought. Indeed, my daughter, my love poured out in torrents toward the creature in each created thing. I told you somewhere else, I confirm to you now, that as my uncreated love created the sun, it placed in it oceans of love. And in each drop of light that was to inundate the eye, the step, the hand, and everything of the creature, my love ran within it, and almost pounding sweetly upon the eye, the hand, the step, the mouth, it gives her my eternal kiss, and it holds out my love to her. Together with the light runs the heat, and pounding on her a little more strongly, almost impatient for the love of the creature, to the point of pelting her, I repeat to her, more strongly, my eternal I love you. And if the sun with its light and heat fecundates the plants, it is my love that runs for the nourishment of man. And if I extended a heaven above man's head, studding it with stars, it was my love that, wanting to delight man's eye, also at night, spoke to him my I love you in each sparkling of star. So each created thing holds out my love to man, and if it were not so, creation would have no purpose, and I do nothing without purpose. Everything was made for man, but man does not recognize it, and he has turned into sorrow for me. Therefore, my daughter, if you want to soothe my sorrow, come often into my will, and in the name of all, give me adoration, love, gratitude, and thanksgiving for all. January 15th, 1920. The one who wants to love, repair, substitute for all, must live life in the divine will. I was pouring all of myself into the divine volition, to be able to substitute for everything that the creature is obliged to do toward the Supreme Majesty. And while I was doing this, I said to myself, where shall I find enough love to be able to give my sweet Jesus love for all? And in my interior he told me, my daughter, in my will you shall find this love that can make up for the love of all, because the one who enters into my will shall find many springing fonts, and as much as he may take, they never decrease by one drop. So there is the font of love that mightily spouts its waves, but as much as it spouts, it always springs. There is the font of beauty, and no matter how many beauties it puts out, it never fades. On the contrary, it springs with ever new and more beautiful beauties. There is the font of wisdom, the font of contentments, the font of goodness, of power, of mercy, of justice, and of all the rest of my qualities. They all spring up, and each one pours into the other, in such a way that love is beautiful, is wise, is powerful, and so forth. The font of beauty, the beauty, love, wise, powerful, and with such power as to keep the whole of heaven enraptured, without ever tiring them. These springing fonts form such a harmony, such a contentment, and an enchanting show, that all the blessed remain so sweetly enchanted, that they do not move even one glance, so as not to miss even one of these contentments. Therefore, my daughter, the strict necessity for the one who wants to love, repair, substitute for all, to live life in my volition, where everything springs, things multiply for as many as are needed, and remain all coined with the divine imprint. And this divine imprint forms other fonts, whose waves rise so high that in pouring down they flood everything and do good to all. Therefore, always, always in my will, there do I await you, there do I want you. January 24th, 1920. God created man so that he might keep him company. Continuing in my usual state, I was uniting myself with Jesus, praying him not to leave me alone, and to come to keep me company. And he, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, if you knew how I desire, long for, love the company of the creature, so much that if in creating man I said, it is not good for man to be alone, let us make another creature, who may resemble him and keep him company, so that one may form the delight of the other. These same words I spoke to my love before creating man. I do not want to be alone, but I want the creature in my company. I want to create him in order to amuse myself with him, to share with him all my contentments. With his company, I shall pour myself out in love. This is why I made him in my likeness, and as his intelligence thinks of me, is occupied with me, so he keeps company with my wisdom. And as my thoughts keep company with his, we amuse ourselves together. If his gaze looks at me and at created things in order to love me, I feel the company of his gaze. If his tongue prays, teaches what is good. I feel the company of his voice. If his heart loves me, I feel the company in my love, and so with all the rest. But if instead he does the opposite, I feel lonely and like a destitute king. But alas, how many leave me alone and neglect me. March 14th, 1920. The martyrdom of love surpasses in an almost infinite way all other martyrdoms together. My state is ever more painful, and while I was swimming in the immense sea of the privations of my sweet Jesus, of my life, of my all, I couldn't help lamenting, and also speaking some nonsense. And my Jesus, moving in my interior, sighing, told me, "My daughter, you are the hardest martyrdom, the crudest pain for my heart. And every time I see you moan and petrified by the pain of my privation, my martyrdom becomes more bitter. And the spasm is such that I am forced to sigh, and moaning I say, 'Oh man, how much you cost me! You formed my martyrdom to my humanity, that taken by folly of love for you, took upon itself all your pains. And you continue to form the martyrdom of the one who, taken by love for me and for you, offered herself as victim for me and for your sake. So my martyrdom is continuous. Even more, I feel it more vividly because it is the martyrdom of the one who loves me. And the martyrdom of love surpasses in an almost infinite way all other martyrdoms together." Then, drawing his mouth close to the ear of my heart, moaning, he said, my daughter, poor daughter. Only your Jesus can understand you and compassionate you, because I feel your own martyrdom in my heart." Then he added, "Listen, my daughter, if with the chastisement of war man had humbled himself and come to his senses, other chastisements would not be necessary. But man has raged even more. Therefore, in order to make man come to his senses, more terrible chastisements than the war itself are needed, which shall happen. Therefore justice is forming voids, and if you knew what void is being formed in my justice, with my not coming to you, you would tremble. In fact, if I came to you, you would make my justice your own. And taking the pains upon yourself, you would fill the voids that man forms with sin. Have you not done this for many years? But now the obstinacy of man renders him unworthy of this great good, and this is why I often deprive you of myself. And in seeing you martyred because of me, my pain is so great that I become delirious. I moan, I sigh, and I am forced to hide my moans from you, without even being able to pour them out with you, so as not to give you more pains." March 19th, 1920. Life in the divine will is to live without one's own life, without personal reflections, but is the life that embraces all lives together. I was lamenting to my always lovable Jesus, saying to him, How you have changed! Is it possible that not even suffering is there for me anymore? Everyone suffers. I alone am not worthy to suffer. It is true that I surpass everyone in badness, but you have pity on me. Do not deny me at least the crumbs of the much suffering that you abundantly do not deny to anyone. My love, how horrifying my state is. Have pity on me, have pity. While I was saying this, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior, telling me, "Ah, my daughter, calm yourself, otherwise you hurt me," opening deeper gashes in my heart. "Do you perhaps want to surpass me?" I too would have wanted to enclose in me all the pains of creatures. My love toward creatures was so great that I would have wanted no pain to touch them any more. But this I could not obtain. I had to submit to the wisdom and the justice of the Father, who, while allowing me to satisfy to a large extent for the pains of creatures, did not want satisfaction from me for all the pains, and this for the decorum and the balance of his justice. My humanity would have wanted to suffer so much as to put an end to hell, to purgatory, and to all scourges. But the divinity did not want it, and justice said to my love, "You wanted the right of love, and it was granted to you, and I want the rights of justice." I resigned myself to the wisdom of my Father. I saw it as just, but my moaning humanity felt the pain of it, because of the pains that touched the creatures. In hearing your laments for not suffering, I hear the echo of my laments, and I run to sustain your heart, to give you strength, knowing how hard such pain is. Know, however, that this is also a pain of your Jesus. I resigned myself for love of Jesus, also to not suffer, but the torment of my heart was most bitter, and many things wandered through my mind, especially on what he had told me on the divine volition. I seemed not to see in me the effects of his word, and Jesus benignly added, "My daughter, when I asked you whether you would consent to want to live life in my volition, and you accepted, saying, 'I say yes, not in my will, but in yours, so that my yes may have all the power and the value of a yes of a divine volition,' that yes exists and shall always exist, just as my will shall exist. Therefore your life ended. Your will has no more reason to live. And this is why I told you that since all creatures are in my will, in the name of the whole human family, you come to lay at the foot of my throne, in a divine manner, the thoughts of all in your mind, to give me the glory of each thought, in your gaze, in your word, in your action, in the food you take, and even in your sleep, those of all. So, your life must embrace everything. And don't you see that when sometimes oppressed by the weight of my privation, something escapes you of what you do, and you do not unite all the human family together, I reprimand you. And if you don't listen to me, afflicted I say to you, if you do not want to follow me, I do it on my own. Life in my will is to live without one's own life, without personal reflections, but is the life that embraces all lives together. Be attentive in this, and do not fear. March 23rd, 1920. The soul wants hiddenness, and Jesus wants her as light. I was saying to my sweet Jesus, I would like to hide myself to the point of disappearing from everyone, and so that everyone would forget about me, as if I no longer existed on earth. How heavy it is for me having to deal with people. I feel all the necessity of a profound silence. And he, moving in my interior, told me, you want to hide yourself, and I want you as candelabra that must give light. And this candelabra shall be lit by the reflections of my eternal light. So if you want to hide, you do not hide yourself, but you hide me, my light, my word. After this, I continued to pray, and I don't know how, I found myself outside of myself together with Jesus. I was small, and Jesus was big, and he told me, my daughter, stretch yourself so as to equal me. I want your arms to reach mine, your mouth mine. I did not know how to do that, because I was too small. And Jesus placed his hands within mine, and he repeated to me, stretch yourself, stretch yourself. I tried, and I felt like a spring, such that if I wanted to stretch, I got longer. If not, I remained small. So I easily stretched myself, and I leaned my head upon Jesus' shoulder, and he continued to keep his hands within mine. At the contact with his most holy hands, I was reminded of the wounds of Jesus, and I said to him, my love, you want me to equal you, and why don't you give me your pains? Give them to me. Don't deny them to me. Jesus looked at me and pressed me tightly to his heart, as if he wanted to tell me many things. And he disappeared, and I found myself inside myself. April 3rd, 1920. All the will of God in creating man was that he would do his will in everything, in order to develop his life in him. Continuing in my poor state, I felt my lovable Jesus in my interior, uniting himself to pray together with me. And then he told me, my daughter, all my will in creating man was that he would do my will in everything. And as he would gradually continue to do this will of mine, I would come to complete my life in him in such a way that after repeated acts done in my will, forming my life in him, I would come to him, and finding him similar to me, the son of my life, finding the son of my life that he had formed in his soul, would absorb him into me, and as they would be transformed together, like two sons into one, I would bring him into the delights of heaven. Now, by the creature's not doing my will, or if now she does it, now she does not, my life is halved by the human life, and the divine life cannot be completed. it is obscured by the human acts, and does not receive abundant food to give a development that would be sufficient in order to form a life. Therefore, the soul is in continuous opposition to the purpose of creation. But alas, how many are there who, by living the life of sin, of passions, form within themselves the diabolical life? You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 12, Part 15. Fiat.